Eric. She's out for her choice. They're in Galaxy Diner. I got her.
I think you're losing. How did it come about?
Yeah. I mean, like I've done a lot of civic games, so good job, and
Welcome everyone. We're going to start the meeting since it's a long one today. If everyone will just take a seat. If everyone will take a seat, please. We're going to start the meeting. We have a long meeting today, so I'm going to get started. We're going to start the December 9th, 2024 committee meeting of the Fairfield RTM. Let's all stand for the pledge. I'm just going to jump around a little bit in our presentation schedule. The Golf Commission presentation is a little long, so I'm going to let the appointees to commissions go first. Do we have Michael Pacewicks here or online? If you're online, you could just unmute yourself. Oh, that's Mark. Okay, do we have Mr. Beal here? Mr. Beal, you could come on up. This is agenda item 5 concerning the appointment to Solid Waste and Recycling Commission. We can have this at page 49 of our backup. Welcome, Mr. Beal. If you just want to tell us a little bit about why you want to be on this and why you think you're suited. Good news for everyone who's presented to us before, that mic is live. There's no need to push the button. You just speak into it though, so everyone can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Andy Beal, and I'm grateful to be here this evening to have a chance to talk to you about joining the commission. Brief background, I have resided in Fairfield for the last 10 years, and I have found it to be a wonderful place to live, not just for myself, but my family. I feel honored to be considered to serve on this town commission, to work with its members, and to contribute to our town. From a work history kind of basis, I did graduate in 1983 with a BA in economics, and then quickly moved to the financial sector, where I worked for over 40 years, having just retired this spring. I find the SWRC to be very interesting from the perspective that it looks at both environmental benefits and business considerations while servicing the Fairfield community. It's not that often that I've been involved with businesses that actually have what you might call public goods or environmental benefits, or however you want to think about it. So I think, you know, when I look at this committee, there's
Just 1 second. One of the members online just asked for you to get a little closer to the microphone. Thank you.
Will do. Pardon me. No, I was just thinking about how this business actually looks. It looks like we get a lot of waste coming at us, and we figure out how to move it to another location. But the waste itself actually provides a number of benefits, not only environmental, but as a source of revenue, and also to the extent we can extract materials from that waste stream, we can lower the overall cost of doing business, at the same time reducing the amount of pollutants that that waste would otherwise generate. There's a bunch of different ways that we can kind of come at that. I won't go into them in depth, but I do think that it's always nice when you can create more good, potentially at the same time you are essentially reducing the economic burden you put on the system. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. I also like the engineering side. But having said that, it's a really interesting proposition. You know, I am not an expert in this field at this point, but I look forward to expanding my knowledge of recycling, composting, and other aspects of the business. I'm happy to share any of my experience, and obviously looking for good opportunities out there. We'll be exploring to try and come up with ideas that can help the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Beal? Seeing none, it sounds like you have a wonderful interest and we appreciate it. Our clerk will let you know next week if you have to come back on Monday, but you probably won't. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Megan McCall will be at our regular meeting next week. She couldn't come today. We're gonna go, is Mr. Accomando here? There was a couple unconfirmed people, unfortunately, that never responded. Okay, if you're online, nope, seeing none. All right, I see Mr. Newman is here. We'll move on to item 7, the reappointment of Eric Newman to the Employees Retirement Board. Backup begins on page 61. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Eric Newman, 85 Eastfield Drive. Been serving on the employee townside pension plan the past 4 years, where I've served as vice chairman as well as secretary, both on the committee as well as the JRIB. Other boards I serve on in the pension industry, I serve on several pension investment boards in the city of Stamford, where I work. I also serve on the African Institutional Investor Council, which is a global organization that focuses on development and investments in the African continent. I speak internationally at different institutional investor conferences on a variety of investment-related subjects, from fixed income, private equity, infrastructure, global development, ESG, and so forth. So looking forward to continue serving on the board and managing and making sure that, you know, it's well managed as we have been, and making sure that retirees in the future, current and in the future, have a quality of life in retirement.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Newman? Mr. Wolk.
Jay Wolk, District 5. Thank you, Madam Moderator. So, Eric, Mr. Newman, for those of you who don't know, we go back a long time. Eric also served on the RTM with us for many years. He also was involved, he was also on the committee for tax relief, right?
Yep.
And not only, first of all, I think Eric is well overqualified. So you have my support. I'll end it on that, and I'm glad you're back on the board. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you. Betsy will let you know if you have to return next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank you. I'm going to give one last chance to see if Mr. Accomando or Mr. Beal is, not Mr. Beal, I apologize, Mr. Payswitz is here before we bring up the Golf Commission, which is going to be a 30-plus minute presentation. Seeing none, we'll go back to agenda item 3 to hear a report from the Golf Commission on their 10-year golf improvement plan. This can be found starting on page 1 of our backup. We have our Parks and Recreation Director, Anthony Calabrese, online, Chair of the Golf Commission, Peter Sechrist, and Vice Chair Mike Harrington here to give us a report. Hello.
All right. Hi, Marcy. It's Anthony Calabrese, Director of Parks and Recreation. Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to keep this short and sweet on my end. I know our Vice Chair, Mike Harrington, would love to go run through the 10-year plan that we have for you guys. So I'm going to turn it over to him. Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Anthony. It's good to be here with you all. Um, As Anthony said, the Golf Commission has been working on putting together a 10-year plan for the golf course. Our objective is to acquaint you and the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance with the status and requirements of the golf course and what we think we will be needing going forward, so that as we do come forward in future years with requests for support in various forms, it will be things that you will not be surprised at. You'll know that we've been working on it and planning on these things for quite some time. The objective of this presentation and our plan is to lay out the steps necessary to preserve the golf course revenues, continue a track record of revenues exceeding operating expenses, and keep the golf course to a benchmark standard of play. I apologize to you folks there that are sitting in front of the slides, but you have a copy of the handout, hopefully.
We can see it over there. I'm not sure if the members online, though, have it.
The overview of our plan is I'm going to talk about the current state at the three entities that make up golf operations, those being the Carl Dickman Par 3 Golf Course, the driving range. What happened there? I may need to be rescued by Chelsea. Oh, there we go. The driving range and, of course, H. Smith Richardson Golf Course, which is our main golf course. I'll then present to you the proposed improvements that we're looking at over the 10-year time frame and what the financial impact of those improvements will be. Golf operations, financial performance. As you can see from this slide, the total revenue for the golf courses is in excess of 2 million, almost, in some early years approaching $3 million. That's a combination of H. Smith Richardson, which includes the driving range in this chart, as well as Carl Dickman and also the youth program, which I will speak about in more detail in a minute. The operating costs are presented here, and they run in the neighborhood of $2.3 million. And you can see from this slide that the operating income has been in the black continuously, and in recent years has been in the neighborhood of $750,000. We do have a debt burden. That comes currently from two sources. A 10-year plan was submitted and approved in 2010 and funded at a rate of about $100,000 a year for the subsequent 10 years. All that is being depreciated. But the big change was when we built the new clubhouse a couple of years ago, and you'll note that in 2022-23, we jumped up to about $500,000 in debt burden, and that's principally because of the addition of the clubhouse. But even with the addition of the debt burden that we've incurred, including the clubhouse, the golf operations operate in the black and operate in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000 of profit. And I apologize, I have once again messed up the, there we go. So that's the financial performance of the golf courses. The Carl Dickman Par 3. Likewise operates on an operating basis in the black. You can see here the number of rounds at the Carl Dickman Golf Course. We do about 30 to 32,000 rounds a year at that golf course, and a little more than half of those are non-resident rounds. The golf course financial performance, once again, you can see that the operating profit, it continues to be in the black, and it runs somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $150,000 a year. There is no debt burden for the Par 3 course. And the current state of the Par 3 golf course is that it is in very good condition and very much in demand. The driving range has been a fits and starts story. You can see here what the income has been at the driving range. It's been running up until this year at the rate of about $150,000 to $200,000 a year. It has historically been in very poor condition and very much underutilized. Fortunately, the town approved an investment of $550,000 of capital to upgrade the driving range. The initial part of that upgrade was the rebuilding of all the stalls that are at the driving range, and including in those stalls track tracer technology and other things that we didn't have that make it a much more attractive course. We rebuilt the stalls. We are now going to add, we added light, heat, and top tracer technology. And we will be constructing over this winter a short-range practice area between the driving range and the softball field, which will include some bunkers and some greens and some other areas for people to practice their game. If you look at the budget, you'll see that the 2025 budget jumps up to over $300,000. We did open the range in August of this year. The principal increase in revenue comes from the fact that with a much more attractive range, we raised the price of a bucket of golf balls from $6 to $10. And we do about 30 to 35,000 buckets of balls a year. So that accounts for the significant increase in the 2025 budget, 2024-25 budget. We have a question.
I think we're going to wait till the end of the presentation. Yeah, I saw you. I thought you understood that. Yeah.
Okay. H. Smith Richardson, the rounds at H. Smith Richardson's, if you look again at this, we run in the neighborhood of now 45 to 50,000 rounds. If you look at 2019, 2020, they were more in the 35,000 rounds range. What hits in 2021, of course, is COVID. And at both the par 3 course and at Smith Richardson, we saw dramatic increases. 56,000 rounds at that golf course is unprecedented and is absolutely all that it could possibly handle. I would like to report, however, for this year, we're going to do 51,000. The course will be open for another week, but with the good weather we've had this fall, the rounds have increased dramatically in the fall. So we're going to hit about 51,000 rounds this year. Just to give you a little sense of the rounds at this golf course, in 2022, we put together, or was the last year we had data indicating the number of rounds at municipal and public courses in the PGA regional sectional area. The maximum number of rounds played at any golf course in that area was 49,000 rounds, and it was at H. Smith Richardson Golf Course. We do more rounds than any other municipal course in the area. As a comparison to that 49,000, Tashua Knowles that year did 46,000, and Fairchild Wheeler does 75,000, but they do it with 2 18-hole courses, and they're open all year round. So the rounds are dramatic, and this course is just as saturated as it can be in terms of the level of play. And you can see here the financial performance. You can see the revenue, the operating costs. We operate again on this golf course at a profit of at least $500,000 or better on an operating basis. The youth program that I'll speak to in more detail in a minute brings in about $45,000. Our debt service, which is where you see the debt service jump in fiscal 23 for the clubhouse, but even adding the debt service in, the course continues to operate in the black. We have at Smith, with the new clubhouse, an opportunity to have charity events. We will have 17 events. We have had 17 events at the course. They're all Fairfield-based charities, and those charities raise somewhere in the neighborhood of $440,000 for the various charities that utilize the golf course. The youth program, about 4 years ago, activity, 400 this year in the youth program. He also had a series of and lessons for adults, and you can see here that acted 272 adults this past year in that program. net of his costs, that program makes $45,000. That money has not been put in the budget for the golf course, but it does accrue to the town general fund. And for us at this golf course. Now, the cart paths, and our biggest now. The idea on a cart path is that they should be a minimum of 8 foot in width. The original cart paths installed at Smith Richardson were 6 foot. So we do not achieve GA standard, and it's an important standard from the standpoint of safety vehicles and also certain types of construction equipment to be able to get in there without tearing up the fairways and tearing up the golf course. We have 5.5 miles of cart paths. About a mile meets the USGA 8 foot standard. We have about a half a mile of fairway with no cart path. And the balance of roughly 4 miles is the old 6 foot original, and this course is 52 years old, original cart paths which have deteriorated significantly. This is a serious problem in the event that we need emergency vehicles on the golf course. It's a hazard to the golfers and to the vehicles. There's a risk of damage to the golf carts that we lease. And even more importantly, because they're so bad, when golfers get the golf carts, they do not use the cart paths. They go out on the fairway and they're tearing up the course. Of course, it's already trying to deal with 50,000 rounds a year. That is very significant in terms of the deterioration of the golf course. This will show you where the cart paths are. This is the back 9. The green lines are the 8 foot wide USGA specification paths. The yellow lines are the original 6 foot wide over on the 9th hole cart path at all. On the front end, break into 2 slides here. Once again, on the first, which is an 8 foot cart path. And the history on that is it was a 6 foot cart path. And when we brought in bucket trucks to do tree work, the width of the trucks was wider than the path, and they tore up the whole edge of the fairway over there, and they paid to rebuild that cart path. But you can see almost all the other cart paths on the front 9 are yellow here, meaning that they are 6 foot wide and almost all nearly original paths to the golf course. Bunkers. The chart that you see here now shows the date of the rebuilding, the last rebuilding of the 42 bunkers on the golf course. And you can see that we have not rebuilt a bunker since 2015. The average life of a bunker is 8 to 10 years. So we are living on borrowed time, having not done any work, although the current condition of the bunkers is acceptable, and none of them at this point require any significant upgrade work. The current sand quality in the bunkers is marginal. And I would also call your attention to, if you look at the costs of the rebuild, 10 years ago, it was an average of $13,000 to rebuild one of these bunkers. This year, we're estimating that it's going to be double that. Trees are the greens. The greens are in excellent condition. We have had a USGA agronomist out at the golf course in 2020, and we had them back again in 2024. They sampled most of the greens, and they could not believe that this golf course has got 50,000 rounds of traffic. The USGA agronomist said that the greens are all in very good condition, and as you will see, there is nothing at the present in our plan expecting additional investment or costs for the greens. Trees. This is an area that has sort of gotten out of hand on us. Again, the USGA agronomist came out in 2004, 2021, 2024. They all had the same recommendations. They said the tree growth is impacting the playability of the golf course. The trees are growing out over the greens or onto the fairway, And this is significant because as the course gets more difficult, pace of play slows down and it becomes more difficult to achieve the level of rounds that we've been experiencing. They're also limiting the turf grass growth and the health of the turf in the fairways. And so we need to open it up and get more sunlight on various areas to improve the turf of the fairways. In the forested areas, the trees have not been touched or pruned, and they're very closely planted, and there's very poor quality branching on the trees in the forested areas. Drainage. This was an area of significant investment and expense from the 2010 long-term plan that was put together. The drainage was so poor that after a rainstorm, you couldn't get carts out on the course for 2 or 3 days, and it had a significant impact on our number of rounds and our pace of play. Significant expenditure in that 10-year plan. The drainage in the course is pretty good now. We have a couple of areas that need to be addressed, but we have been able to address them within the operating expense and the operating staff at the golf course without having to go back to consideration for capital improvement. So we continue to improve the drainage through tweaking by the grounds crew, and the current state of the drainage on the golf course is acceptable. So here is our proposal. We propose capital of $1.5 million. Of course, like the last plan, that's not all approved in one lump sum up front. We will come back each year as the needs arise and can be justified seeking capital for each year. The principal investment that we're looking to now is the cart paths. There's $500,000 required to rebuild all the non-specification cart paths currently at the golf course. We're putting in here $350,000 for bunker rebuilds. And I'll explain in a minute how we're going to go about determining what bunkers need to be rebuilt. Tree management, we put in $400,000 for significant work to clean the trees out to improve playability and turf health. We have a need for lightning warning systems. Neither Smith Richardson nor Carl Dickman Par 3 have automated lightning detection and warning systems. The only other golf course in this area that does not is Fairchild Wheeler. So we need to get those two investments in from a safety standpoint. At the Carl Dickman Par 3 course, the only need in this 10-year plan is for the lightning warning system. And at the driving range, while we have a beautiful new driving range from the standpoint of stalls, the building at the driving range is the original trailer-type building that has been there for many, many years, and it's falling apart. And that building is used to house the equipment that we need at the driving range, as well as the employees who work at the range and manage the range. So we need to rebuild that building, and we're estimating that the replacement building will be $100,000. So if you look at this in terms of priorities, we put the cart path as the number one priority, tree management number 2. The next 3 kind of group together, and they're going to be site-specific depending on the need at the time, but we need to replace the building at the driving range. The restroom facility, at the turn after the 9th hole, there is no restroom except going into the clubhouse, which is time-consuming and awkward and tends to bottleneck golfers at the 10th tee waiting to tee off. We have at that site in that area water, electricity, access to the leaching field from the new restaurant. And so one of the options is to build at the end of the building, right by the 10th tee box, where there's an open area, a specific restroom for that area. If we didn't do that, we would then put something up at the top of the 10th hole near the maintenance facility and have the restroom up at that area. And then, of course, I've spoken to the lightning systems. I would tell you that when I gave this presentation to the Board of Finance a couple weeks ago, their sense was that we should get this lightning investment done and that we should increase the $500,000 year one capital request by the $70,000 you see here and get those things out of the way so we've got as safe a golf course as we can have. So the priority projects, the cart paths. As I've already explained, 80% of the cart paths are unacceptable, non-existent. It's a safety issue. The poor quality causes people to be out on the course, damaging the course. It's a $500,000 investment. It is a significant project. Much of the equipment necessary to do this work we do not have on site at the golf course. And the town equipment used for roads is too big to do something like an 8-foot cart path. So, and this project has a significant startup cost because of bringing in the type of specialized equipment that'll be needed in order to do it. We have to rip out the old cart paths. We have to prepare the bed of the path to receive, to be a proper depth of what will basically be gravel, and then cover that up with the asphalt topping. So our interest in our proposal is to do this as one project. We do have a bit of a timing constraint in that the asphalt plant is closed from November to March. So we need to do this sometime outside that window, and that means it's going to interfere to some degree with golfing. We are in the process right now of putting together the entire scope of this project and preparing bid packages, hoping that once we get approval for this capital, we can immediately get it out for bid, possibly have it done over this winter, but more likely something that we will do in the fall of next year, going into the winter of next year, in the fall of 2025. Trees. The tree management criteria, as I said, is three things: playability, turf health, and forest management. We propose both removal of trees. We have some non-native trees that we need to get out of, and in some cases, we will replace those trees. We do not have within our resources at the golf course the kind of expertise to put together a specific tree plan. We need an arborist or an agronomist or someone of that sort. So our proposal is that, and you'll see in a minute, timing-wise, this is not in the first year, but we want to get some professional expertise to go through the golf course, identify the trees that should be removed, and help us put together a multi-year plan. We have budgeted $400,000 to do the tree work over the entire 10-year plan. The tree work, as I've said here, it's not urgent, but it's something that we need to do soon because, to give you an example, the first year recommendation of the 2021 agronomist report, they gave us a recommendation for tree work in year one. That tree work today is still not complete. We just have not had the resources or the finances, and this does require bringing in outside people to do some of the tree work for us. So it's urgent, but it's not urgent, but it's something we want to do right after the cart paths. Bunkers. Right now, as we say, there's no current issues. Last major rebuilds, as you saw, was 9 years ago. Typical bunker life is 8 to 10 years, so we think we're living on borrowed time. But our approach to this is going to, and we can do a lot of the bunker work with the grounds crew resources and equipment that we have at the golf course. So our approach to this is going to be to continue to watch the bunkers. It's hard to predict which ones will fail. It won't necessarily be the last one repaired will be, or the first one repaired will be the first one to fail. It depends on the condition of the bunkers. They fail in a variety of ways. Most of these bunkers have underneath them a drainage system, so the water goes through the sand and drains out. In some cases, those drainage systems can plug up. In other cases, we have the edges of the bunkers that are collapsing and falling in, and the sand is being contaminated with soil. As I said, the old bunker program was about $13,000 a bunker. We're estimating $20,000 to $25,000 per bunker for this budget, but it depends on which bunker, how big it is, and where it is as to exactly what it will be. But we're estimating a total investment in bunkers of $350,000. The other priority projects, I mentioned the building at the driving range is $100,000, the restroom facility at the golf course, and the lighting systems. But if you look at the next slide, you will see how we have laid this out over time. We are proposing year one, the entire $500,000. I have not updated this slide to reflect moving forward the lightning warning systems. They are still in there for years 3 and 4. And the other years are basically a mix of tree work and bunker work. These are isolated small projects. Unlike the cart paths where you got to do it pretty much all at once, these can be done piecemeal and spread out over time. And we put this together looking at roughly $100,000 to $115,000 a year number for this work to be consistent with the requirement of a minimum $100,000 of capital. So this is the current thinking on how it lays out, but of course we will come forward each year with an update on the status and condition of the trees, the bunkers, and other things, and propose the subsequent next year's work. So this slide is awfully busy. This is a debt service projection for this $1.5 million of capital in the event that we did it all as laid out. We made an assumption of 4.7% funding. And if you look down at the bottom of the chart, you see there on the assumed number of rounds, 45,000 rounds a year, and we won well over that now. The kind of increase in revenue in terms of greens fees, we show year one at $1 and then every other year at 50 cents. Let me give you a little more information about greens fees. The Golf Commission has set the rates for next year, for the 2025 season. If you look at the operating costs of the golf courses, they're about $3 million. If you look at a 3% escalation year over year, you're looking at something like $65,000 to $70,000 in expected increased costs for next year. We raised the rates, the equivalent of $150,000 next year. We've raised green fees at the par 3. We've raised green fees at the H. Smith Richardson Golf Course. We have raised significantly the cart rental. We do 24,000 cart rentals a year, and we raise those $2 each, so that's another $48,000. And you've seen in an earlier slide our anticipated increase in revenue at the driving range, and the $150,000 I've mentioned does not include the driving range. The driving range will be additional to that. This course has a latent demand, which is tremendous. The 4UP people who put together who manage our tee time system estimate that on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, our busiest days, for every tee time we give, we turn down 2. So there's a tremendous demand here, and we are confident in these increases in green fees to be able to cover comfortably the capital costs that we're building into this long-term plan. So the plan summary, to go back to our objective, we preserve the golf course's revenues. Revenues continue to exceed expenses. We keep the golf course at a benchmark standard of play. The $1.5 million capital investment is largely cart paths, bunkers, and tree management. The strong latent demand for rounds will allow us to increase rates to cover the additional debt burden that is associated with this plan. So with that, I thank you for your time, attention, and support for the Fairfield golf courses and golf operations.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I'll now take questions, starting with Representative Carroll.
Or not, yeah, thank you. Chris Carroll, District 8. I have a couple questions, if I may, and I get questions from constituents. This one's not. When I look on page 3 at your revenues, the projected revenues for H. Smith Richardson Golf Course, and in later pages, you're telling us the driving range is going up $125,000 in revenue. But the total revenue for the golf course is only going up 90, including that. So basically the golf course is going down $35,000. I was wondering how with projected increases in.
You're looking at
costs. I'm looking at page 3. It says H. Smith Richardson Fiscal year 25, you show an increase of $96,000. And you noted in the presentation that includes the driving range.
Yeah, it does include.
And
the driving.
you noted that the driving range was going up $125,000.
Not till budget year 2025.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
2025. So just some quick math there. If the driving range is going up 125, but total revenue is only going up 96, there's a delta here of $30,000 that's going down. I'm just wondering why you expect revenues at the golf course itself to go down.
It's largely due to the debt burden, I believe, Mike. I don't have the presentation in front of me, but the debt burden increases from the clubhouse that was built in 21.
All right, I'll take a look at it. Thank you. The 38,000, I'll go back and look at it. Probably doesn't, but I'll go back and look at that. Thanks, Anthony. The 38,000 rounds, how many golf ID cards are sold to residents? I was trying to figure out how, people ask me, who actually uses this golf course? You know, understanding, looks like a third to a half of the rounds are non-residents.
No, the non-resident rounds now are running in a neighborhood at Smith in the neighborhood of 20 to 25%,
Okay,
which is a little below where it has been historically.
okay.
And a lot of that is because of the change of mix.
But do we have any, just roughly, Anthony, do you know how many golf IDs do we sell? How many people
no,
of the?
3,000. It's just under 3,000 a year.
It's under, last
Okay, so about 5% of the
2024, we
population.
get 2,800 golf IDs.
Is that
That's
right?
correct. That sounds about right.
Okay. And then my last question, I'll leave this alone. Who gets comp rounds?
I'm sorry?
Who gets comp rounds?
All the schools do, like middle schools down at the par 3,
Right.
they get comp rounds, and then starters, rangers, employees of the golf course they make minimum wage, so they get comp rounds when they play.
And do town employees pay for their golf rounds who are non-golf course employees?
Yes.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
no discount for town employees, just golf course employees.
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
And we also give comp rounds. Any PGA professional who comes to the course gets a comp round
Right,
as well.
right. So so people who work over on Mill Plain there in the Parks Department, Anthony, they pay for a round of golf if they play?
Yes.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, because I've had people say to me, town employees go out and play for free all the time, but
No.
that's
Yeah,
not true.
That's
You're
not
telling me that's not true. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Kuhn.
Hi, Representative Kuhn, District 7. Couple of questions. Well, first, before I get into it, can we, with these improvements, can we increase capacity utilization of the course?
No.
So we're at capacity utilization of 100.
This course is
basically
beyond capacity.
Okay.
A couple of things have happened. It's the wear and tear on the course is significant, particularly on the fairways. The other thing is the course is so busy, we haven't been able to do some of this maintenance work. So there is no way. And as I said, this is the #1 rounds golf course in the entire PGA sectional area for Connecticut for public and municipal courses.
Okay. On the debt service page, is this, which is page 41 of 299 in our backup, it's just before the capital plan summary in the presentation that you gave?
What page is that again?
It's just before your capital plan summary page, so I guess it's 2 pages before that. In the RTM backup material, it's page 41 of 299. Projected debt service and revenue offset.
Okay. And what is your question?
So this,
Because the debt service is pretty simple. It's the old 10-year plan plus the new clubhouse. The $550,000 that's been approved now for the driving range will begin to hit the debt service line, I think in fiscal '26.
and these are interest-only bonds, or are they amortizing?
They're amortizing the bonds.
They are.
Yeah,
That sound right, Bill?
the clubhouse is depreciated over 20 years.
The clubhouse depreciates, the asset depreciates over 20 years, but the bond, is that an interest-only obligation, or is
No,
that?
I can't answer that. I'm not a financial guy. I'm not sure how the bond is depreciated. I know what is being charged.
Okay, so
Representative Kuhn, you can always ask that through me and I can get it to the right
okay.
person who
I'm
can answer.
curious how you came up with the 4.75% rate.
We just picked a number. When I came to the selectmen's budget meeting, capital meeting about a month ago, they were talking something more like 4.25. We just picked a number to put this chart together.
Okay, so we based it on something realistic, because in 2026, we're pretty tight on the debt service coverage.
Understood.
So I'm sort of curious if we can, hence my question about the utilization. And it almost sounds like the way the course is used, that 500,000 for,
The clubhouse?
no, not for the clubhouse,
Oh.
for the paths.
Oh, yes.
That might even get delayed to some degree, part of it, just because of the use. And you already said, I think, that you were planning on the latter
Right.
part of the year.
You could do the cart pass over 2 or 3 years. It's going to be more expensive because of the kind of equipment that has to come in, the setup costs and marshaling the costs. The cart paths are in bad shape. They are unsafe and the carts are tearing up the golf course. And so to defer that beyond 1 year, you're just asking for additional
I'm not
cost.
suggesting deferring it. I'm saying that it just might happen.
It could be adjusted.
Okay. That, I'm getting into too much minutia here.
Right.
Apparently I'm getting slapped away.
Thank you, Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. I have two quick questions. The first is, you talked about, there's about $400,000 for like arborist consultation and the tree work. I'm curious with that consultation, why we can't use the Fairfield tree warden? Is that a different specialty?
We have had the tree warden come up and look at our course and look at our plans, but they would not do the work. Yeah.
It looked like you were also bringing in like a arborist consultant. That's what I was curious about, why the tree warden couldn't do that piece.
The tree warden is swamped. That's the other reason.
Thank you. And then last question is, I appreciate this presentation and hearing the breakdown of everything. I'm curious when we might be kind of seeing the actual funding request and if that was going to be coming, and maybe you don't know this yet, as one kind of all the work together, or is it going to be coming piecemeal?
As I understand how the procedure works, the waterfall budget will come forward over the next 2 or 3 months, and that budget includes a number of different capital projects, of which our project will be one, and it will await then the results of that process and hopefully the approval of the various town bodies. So the request is, we will be requesting it as soon as we can submit.
Anthony, did you want to comment more?
Yeah, no, Mike's correct. So you'll see us in February when we come with the first year's worth of requests, the first project, and then you'll see us the next 9 years after that, every year.
Every year.
Thank you. Representative Rock.
Dave Rock, District 2. I've got a couple of comments. I've been here for 16 years. I've played that course. I know it like the back of my hand. The cart paths are awful. I mean, flat out awful. And so if you need any validation in this room as to the cart path condition, it's terrible. I did not realize that you had to go from 6 to 8 feet, but there's that. I would be curious to see some more information about $100,000 building for the driving range maintenance shed. I'm very aware of that building. I know it's dated, but $100,000 seems like an astronomical amount of money. There's
I could jump in, Mr. Rock, if you'd like. Okay, so that
Go
was
ahead,
pretty
go
easily.
ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, we just put in a similar sized building down at the marina about 3 or 4 years ago for $60,000. So speaking with DPW, who did the work internally and using escalation with the environment that we're in right now, they felt $100,000 was a safe estimate.
okay. For the bathroom idea, I would only suggest that maybe at the maintenance area would be a better thing. I know that when golfers come around for pace of play, it might be a better idea to actually put it at, after a hole, because you've got guys buying beers and you're going to slow down pace of play. I'll keep on going. For trees, I've seen nothing but trees fall down. I've never seen any planting. I would really question $400,000 for an arborist and tree work to come in. At this point, there's less shade on that golf course than ever before. I have no problem with a lightning system. I think that is imperative. I'm questioning, is there a non-resident rate at the driving range? And if not, why?
There is none, and to the best of my knowledge, and I've been up there for 50 years, there never has been. And I can't give you a reason why.
Yeah, so I live on Hoyden's Hill, right by the driving range, and we are now seeing out-of-state cars flying up the hill using the golf range. I'm sure it's great revenue, and I appreciate that, but we're also seeing, I mean, are we in the business of letting non-residents use our facilities coming from New York, coming from surrounding areas to use Top Tracer technology? I would encourage you to consider a non-resident rate at the driving range.
Okay.
And the last thing I wanted to point out is Sterling Farms in Stamford, Connecticut is a very well-used public golf facility. They're saying on their website that they are doing 50,000 rounds a year. So I was wondering if you also put that into your analysis when you're giving us numbers here.
When we did the sectional data, I don't recall whether Sterling Farms was in there or not. It was disappointing, frankly. There were only about 55 golf courses that provided any data at all. So that was the only comparison we had. And I don't recall whether Sterling Farms was in there or not.
Okay, great. And then the last thing, the Top Tracer technology is a $50,000 a year subscription fee that you all pay. Does that hit the debt service, or is that somehow paid for outside of debt service?
Outside. It's in the operational budget.
Okay, so we're looking at top line minus 50 grand.
I don't have the report in front of me, so I couldn't tell you, but it's in our operational budget. So when we do our P&L, we subtract it from there.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to seeing the P&L. Thank you, Anthony.
Yep.
Thank you, Representative Esterita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Mike, thank you for coming and presenting to us tonight. A couple of different tracks of questions. The first one, do these enhancements increase the desirability of the course, if you will? Does it make it a more attractive place to play, a more challenging place to play, anything like that? Or are these just things that need to be done to keep the course serviceable?
The short answer is yes. It will make it a much more attractive and appealing golf course. We don't need any more rounds at this golf course. That's really not what we're trying to accomplish here. What we're trying to accomplish is the golf course is worn out and has been deteriorating, and we foresee that if we continue these levels of play and activity, that we're going to have to increase the amount of money we're spending to maintain and improve the course.
So so the reason I'm going this direction, to kind of follow on what Representative Rock was talking about, are we maximizing our fee revenue? And in particular, I'm thinking about, rounds of golf for people coming from outside the town. Would these changes make this population more willing to pay increased fees to play the course?
Yes. I mentioned to you that we have already set the rates for next year and increase the revenue to the course by about $150,000. The process that we go through to do that is we put together an analysis of all the surrounding courses that we consider competitive courses. That would be, in particular, Longshore, Tashua, and Fairchild Wheeler. We want to ensure that we are at least charging the same levels of rates as those golf courses, if not now slightly more because of the kind of demand that we're experiencing. We have a different rate for non-residents and for residents.
Right.
With the COVID, we saw the ratio of non-resident to resident rates slip from about 1/3 non-residents down to about 25% non-residents. And the non-resident fees are higher. So that has a revenue impact on the golf course. I've gone through an analysis to calculate what that revenue impact was, making the assumption that the 25% was actually a
Right.
1/3 level, and it's about a $50,000 a year impact. So we have more than compensated for that. This year, we raised the residence rates by $2, and as I said, we raised the golf cart rates by $2, which is more than we've historically done. Usually, it's $1 a year.
Right.
So we have different rates for non-residents versus residents. The non-resident levels have declined, although this fall, interestingly enough, in the last 2 or 3 months, non-resident rounds are back up.
So I'll defer to some of the golfers in the room, but my understanding has always been that Smith Richardson is probably one of the nicer public courses, and, you know, as a result of that, can we not be charging a premium? So maybe we shouldn't be at the level of Longshore, but we should actually be more expensive than Longshore. Is that not something we would be willing to consider?
Certainly, yes. And as I said, we did this year, I think, raise the rates a little bit more than the competitive courses raise their rates.
Mhm.
But if you look at a course like Tashua, I mean, Tashua is an excellent course in many respects, I think, in better condition than our course. So saying that we're going to be a premium conditioned course versus some of the competitive courses, I don't think it's a matter of opinion, but in my opinion, that is not the case presently.
I would defer to the experts, but I would just like to make sure that we're maximizing, you know, greens fees as best as we possibly can. My second area of questioning, you know, you say that the 10-year projection is about 1.5 million here. I'm just going on gut instinct here for what you're asking to do, like carts, trees. How comfortable are you that these numbers are fairly accurate? Because to be honest, it seems kind of low to me. Because if I'm building, you know, 5 miles worth of cart paths,
Right.
I'm thinking that's a much bigger project.
Well, the cart path number is based on our talking with vendors and suppliers and putting together an estimate with their input. As I said, we're now finishing the detailed scoping of the project to prepare to go out for bids. But the $500,000 number is a number that we put together with input from outsiders. The tree work and the bunker work, you have to look at that in two different ways. You
Yeah.
can look at the unit cost. Is it going to cost $25,000 to fix a bunker?
Right.
That's one question. But the other question is, how many bunkers are there going to be that have to be addressed? And I think if there's any vulnerability in the numbers, it's not in the estimates of 350,000 or 400,000, except they tie to a level of work which may subsequently turn out to be underestimated based on the way we're looking at things.
Yeah.
Right now, the bunkers are in decent shape, and they've lasted pretty well for the last 10 years. So we're making an assumption that we'll need to do the bunker work. I think our $25,000 number is a reasonable number, but how many bunkers will need to be addressed is a different question.
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me is particularly when you're looking over a 10-year time horizon here, that all of a sudden, you know, 1.5 million turns into like 5, 6, 7, 8
Correct.
million as you move through the process here. So I just want to get a sense of how comfortable we are with these numbers.
Well, and recall again the process. We're not asking for $1.5 million up front.
Mhm.
We, every year, will make an assessment of the condition and the status of the golf course and what we think we need to do for the next year.
Right.
And come forward with the specific details on that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Colburn.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Colin Colburn, District 8. Thank you for the presentation. I think I have a question. I think Anthony might have alluded to this, but these are all capital projects, correct?
Correct.
So I think one of my questions is related to the trees specifically. Why is that a capital project and not part of the operating budget? It seems to me like that should be a daily, not daily, but you know what I mean, like a day-to-day operating expense, not a one-time capital expense.
Anthony, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I can. So yeah, you're spot on. And tree work is part of our I would say our regular operation. However, we have, I don't want to say we've neglected trees over the years, but we have definitely not kept up with the amount of tree work that needs to be done. So we're pretty much playing catch up, and that's how it ends up falling into the capital project range.
Right.
That just based on the sheer amount.
Yeah, recall, as I said, the first year recommended by the agronomist in 2021 of tree work still isn't done because we haven't been able to get to it. We either haven't had the resources or we've had too many people playing golf.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McClote.
Hi, Megan McClote, District 2. I'm new here for those that don't know. Very quick question. Thank you for your presentation, Mike. Just a clarifying question. These lightning warning systems, are these upgraded for the systems or are these brand new things, as in to say, have we never had a safety lightning warning system on either of these courses?
Right. These are brand new systems. The current lightning warning system, as the golf professional and the head of the grounds crew look at the weather forecasts on their watches, on their phones or computers. And if they think there's a hazard, they set off the alarm. But that's subjecting the human element, and that's subjecting those people to a liability that they should not be subject to.
So to clarify, what would this lightning warning system consist of? I'm not a golfer or a meteorologist, so help me understand that.
Technically, I'm not sure. I mean, I can
I
tell you
can take it, Mike.
how it works on my boat, but I'm not sure. But there'll be sensors around the course and they will be sensing the atmospheric conditions. And if they think it's a hazard, there will be horns that sound. And anybody that lives in the area of the golf course has heard the horns. And what that is that's a notice to the golfers to get off the golf course. And that's particularly important at Smith because it's so vast. At the par 3, it's not nearly as difficult to get people off that course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Let me just make sure, anyone have questions that haven't asked any questions? Members, in the chat, Representative Shea.
Thank you. Representative Shea, District 2. Thanks for your presentation. Going back to the cart path cost a bit. So you said that you consulted with a couple of vendors and they worked up the numbers for you, and that's how you came up with the $500,000?
That's correct, yes.
And that was projected for the work to occur in the fall of
This
25?
coming year. Sometime in calendar 2025, whether it's over this winter or next spring and winter late in 2025.
Okay, and yeah, you also mentioned the batch plants being closed in the winter, which is correct. I just wonder, the quality of the work done in late fall is not as good as it would be if it was done in the summer months. How long did they project the work was actually going to take, the duration of that project?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
Have your revenue numbers considered the fact that the course will be unplayable maybe, or we won't be able to use carts during the duration of that work?
It has not taken that into account, and we don't anticipate that will be the case. If we can prepare the golf course over the winter and then do it in the early spring, in the March-April timeframe when the rounds are down, it should not have a significant impact on the revenue for the course.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other members that haven't asked any questions? Seeing none, go ahead, Representative Carroll.
Thank you. Chris Carroll, District 8. Just, I wanted to follow up on our earlier conversation, and Anthony, you chimed in, indicated that somehow that the debt service affected revenues. I wasn't a finance major, but that's not true. So I think maybe if next week you could show up with a P&L and show us why revenues are going down. I keep hearing costs or the fees are going up, but your projections show them going down. So if we could see a P&L, that would be really helpful if you could bring that along next week.
I could find it for you, but it's on the town website under all the finance budgets. They get presented every year during the budget process, but I'll track it down.
That would be great.
That would be really helpful.
Just, you
So
can
I don't have
submit
to
it.
go searching for it. That would be very helpful.
But the 2025 budget is up $100,000. I don't understand where you're saying that the revenue has gone down at Smith.
Follow me here. you're telling us that the $125,000 increase is happening at the range, less the $50,000 subscription fee. But your overall is, yes, going up 100,000, 96. So in fact, the golf course
I
revenue
see what you're saying.
is going down, even though you're increasing fees. And to that end, you told them, you made the comment that for every round played, 2 people are turned away.
Roughly, only on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the busy weekend time.
Any consideration that we raise up those non-resident fees to the point where residents actually get to play? Just for your just for your consideration. I think that would be something that people who live in the town who can't play, but non-residents play, maybe for a little more.
Okay, but
Price them out,
But again, non-resident play has dropped from a third down to 20%.
but residents
It's
still
all
can't
been
get tee
overcome
times.
by increases in resident rounds.
But residents still can't get tee times.
Excuse me?
Residents can't get tee times.
Residents
Because
can't-
25%, you said for every tee time, 2 get turned away.
The way the tee time system works is 7 days in advance at 5 a.m., the course opens up for tee time.
Yeah, I play, so I understand how it
Okay.
works. But
When I say twice as many people are turned down as granted tee times, most of those people are residents.
are turned down.
Yes. And that's because the
Exactly.
course is full.
Right. So maybe if we raise the rate on non-residents, less of them will want to play there, and the people paying for all of this
Okay.
actually get to play.
We could do-
Just for your consideration.
We could raise the rates on the 20% non-residents, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Representative Rock.
With non-resident rates and resident rates, Sterling Farms had a policy where a resident could make a tee time 7 days in advance, and a non-resident could make it in, say, 4 days in advance, and that there were blackout periods for non-residents.
Right. In our case, residents are 7 days in advance, non-residents are 6, unless they have a season pass, of which there are only a couple of hundred non-resident seniors pass.
And the metric that you're quoting about for every tee time made, 2 are passed on, how is that calculated?
Or is that what?
How is that calculated?
That's just input we've gotten back from the 4-up tee time system, where people go in to make their tee times. And I'm presuming what they're doing is they're monitoring the overall level of activity. For a Saturday, I would bet that the golf course morning, a week later, is filled in the first 5 minutes. So you still have people trying and trying and trying, and they know how many of those people are not getting tee times.
Just from personal experience, and I'm going to stop. I would just say people come back to see whether or not people have canceled so they can get in. It doesn't mean that there's a double or a triple effect on a particular tee time. It's just people searching for tee times and cancellations. That's all. Thank you.
That may well be.
Thank you. Everybody set? I'd love to move on to the next item. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you all very much
And,
for your attention.
During all of that, we saw Mr. Accomando come online. So I'm going to return to item number 6 on our agenda, James Accomando's appointment to the Historic District Commission. Backup for this item can be found on page 55. Welcome back, Mr. Accomando. Tell us a little bit about why you want to be moved up on this commission. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity, especially to go from alternate to full-time. I think the reason is kind of self-explanatory. As an alternate, you're just filling the space. You're certainly getting the education, the information, et cetera, but you can't make a voting impact until you're down one member who has a full-time status. And then the way they have it set up now is on the alternate basis. There's 3 of us, so it's every third meeting, or they set it up in a 3-way rotation. So while sitting on the committee is a great opportunity to learn about our 3 historic districts, being a voting member and trying to make an impact, I think is really the goal. And I appreciate that my name was brought up this year to go full-time for the next few years. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Accomando regarding his appointment? Members, if you have any questions online, just type into the chat. Seeing none, thank you so much for showing up. We appreciate it. Our clerk will let us, if you have to show up next week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
We're going to move on to item 8 regarding the Professional and Technical Employees Association contract. Backup for this item starts on page 66. We have our HR Director Kathleen Simpson and our Labor Relations Specialist Joanne Cordamount here to update us. Welcome.
Thank you. Not used to no pressing the button.
I know, it's nice. You just got to talk
It's
in the
very
mic.
nice. I know. Be careful. Right? So thank you, everyone, for we had a very robust and meaningful contract negotiations with the PETA union. And I will thank having the labor relations specialist. When I came on board, we were able to get that position, which has been hugely beneficial. And I also want to point out that our COO, David Becker, was extremely instrumental in helping us with cost outs throughout this process. So without further ado, you have your backup, so I'll go through it quickly and we'll take questions, I guess, afterwards. The PETA union, it's got 51 full-time members. There are 3 confidential employees who happen to be in HR that follow the benefits of PETA. And the total base salary of the 54 employees runs about $5,860,000. We were able to reach we did use mediation to get to a settlement, which was quite helpful. And some notable changes, I'll go over those, and we'll start with wages and compensation. So the cost of living adjustments were designed to ensure that an employee's pay is in line with the rate of inflation on the Consumer Price Index. And we agreed to a 2.75% cost of living increase for each year of the contract. So the 23 through 24 and 24 through 25 are retroactive pays, and they're broken down as to cost of those retro pays. Longevity is also something that was, when I got here as the HR director, I noted that longevity was rolled into the salary of the PETA members, which is unusual because I was in this for many years with the state, and the longevity would be a carve out, like a stipend. So when longevity is rolled into the salary, it gives a weird inflated value of that job. So if I start a job and someone's been in the same position, it's because many years rolled into the salary, which also impacts if you're in a pension, it will increase your pension. So we thought it was very important to address that. And so we agreed to a three-tiered approach to remove longevity from the salaries, as well as to phase it out completely. So the approach was the members in the defined benefit pension, it's 18 members, will remain status quo. Their longevity will continue to be a pensionable portion of their salary. It's 3%, 6%, and 9% benchmarks, depending upon what year you're in as an employee. So it is quite generous, and so that was something that we did look at very carefully, and we're strongly trying to get an equitable way to phase that out. So the second tier was that the members of the defined contribution, the 401A, that are not in the defined pension, those are 33 members, will have their longevity payments made in an annual lump sum equal to those 3%, 6%, and 9% longevity benchmarks, but the salaries will only go as high as step 4 on the wage scale, and they will no longer that will not longer be because we don't have to worry about the pensionable items, it won't be a factor. And the final ones, the employees hired after the ratification of the contract will not be eligible for longevity compensation. One of the things about longevity is to maintain retention, and we're finding that does not seem to be a factor. That retention in this group is pretty consistent. The personal leave under the previous contract, it was unlimited and at the discretion of the department head. It could cause an inconsistent applied benefit, and that benefit has been replaced by finite three personal days at the beginning of each fiscal year, with no carryover from one fiscal year to the next, and no payout if you leave for personal leave. Health and welfare benefits. The parties agreed to language clarification as well as providing the option of more affordable, high-deductible health plan, HDHP, with an HSA, similar to the THEA plan. That'll be effective July 1st, 2025. And we agreed to the following premium cost shares. Under the PPO, the current cost share is 70%. The cost share will increase to 17.25 upon implementation of the contract. It'll go up to 17.5 in year 3 and 18% in the final year of the contract. The HDHP, which is a new offer, will be implemented effective July 1st, 2025, with a 13% cost share, which seems low, but we want to give incentives to have employees consider it because it is a savings. And it's also puts more responsibility on the employee to monitor and use their health insurance. It'll encourage migration into the plan. We're hoping with that 13% cost share. And we're also going to be offering ongoing education by human resources regarding the plan design and the financial benefits to the employees. And then the cost share will increase to 14% in the final year of the contract. The medical benefit cost shares will now be based upon enrollment status, which didn't happen before. It's all lumped in, whether you're single plus one, or a family. So rather than the average rate applied to all, despite their enrollment status, we now have this. We now have the 3-tier approach, which is actually more normal. You know, if you have a family, you pay more. A plus one, you pay a little bit more, and a single, you should be paying less. So this, we're hoping, will also help with recruitment and also cut down the cost, because really, as things change, you should be able to adjust the tiers. The retirement plan. New hires will not be eligible for retiree medical benefits or retiree life insurance benefits. That was a big thing in here because the cost of medical benefits for retirees, whether in the 401A or in the pension, were pretty significant. So that was a big, it was a very, one thing we really had to work on very hard for, but I think that it makes sense. And it goes along with the trend to try to make things we're looking at with the tiers and with the health insurance, will make things more equitable and for employees and also the town. Severance pay. The previous contract had severance pay upon resignation or dismissal other than for cause. It was a rate at 1 week's pay for each full year of service. So that was removed. Town vehicle use. The language in the previous contract allowed the employees to request approval from the first selectman to use town vehicles for personal use. In our view, this exposed the town to liability from risk management and also potential disparate treatment claims. And so this benefit, we were able to negotiate to be removed from the contract. We also had a recent audit on town vehicles, and we upgraded our town vehicle policy, so this goes in line with that. This is a 4-year contract. It's July 1 through 2023 through June 30th, 2027. And the union ratified this agreement on November 14th, so that's what we're here to present. So that's my quick summary, and so open to questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Zezma.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. Thank you both for being here. Can I assume in any case, as with this contract where you're removing benefits, that we are now somewhat at parity with other towns? I mean, obviously, we can't attract good people if we're the only one doing that. So is this something that is just going away everywhere, the severance especially?
Here, sorry. Yeah, so the severance seemed to come from the department head policy. And the union members have just cause. So there's always the opportunity, and they have payout of their accrued time. So there was really no reason to have a severance clause. And they're not appointed as department heads are. The other things such as the longevity, the tiered medical benefits, those things are brought in line with many of the other contracts. I was in the city of New Haven for 24 years, and unlimited personal use, it was never heard of. Longevity rolled into salary for pension purposes, never heard of. Usually an annual stipend based on your seniority, and many towns have done away with longevity altogether. So yes, this brought our contract in line with many of the other towns and cities among the state.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Representative Pistilli.
Thank you, Sharon Pistilli, District 5. I just wanted to make sure, I'm just following on to Representative Zezma's question. So there is no severance pay, not for cause now?
There's no severance pay for cause. However, if we had to do a layoff, elimination of jobs, that would be a separate thing to bargain for, if you will, how that's going to look. Instead of having something automatically in the contract, which really wasn't, it's very rare to see this in a collective bargaining agreement. So it's not like we're leaving people high and dry should they get eliminated their positions. There's opportunities with unemployment, and also there's an opportunity to have negotiations about how any kind of, if we got to that point, and we're not, to my knowledge, we're not there, anywhere there. So it just seemed like something in there that just because for some reason, it's an unnecessary benefit because there's so many other added ones, including, as Joanne indicated, vacation payout, and looking at the opportunities also too with when your healthcare, there's COBRA, all the things that are allowed by law. Should your job be eliminated?
And then is the removal of the longevity increase, is that aligned with other town contracts? Like, are we doing the same thing?
The longevity is something that of a very, it's not an archaic kind of thing. I think especially it was I enjoyed it when I was a state employee. And it was something you said here, you get a stipend for being so many years. I've never seen longevity rolled into a salary though. Like that's part of your salary, which goes to your pension. That was unusual to me. And most contracts I've seen, state or other municipalities, do not have that. Longevity is something that is being phased out. I know in New Haven it has been. And again, I guess at one point it might have been a good retention tool, but it doesn't seem to make any sense. We'd rather see salaries based upon the job functions and what the people do, as opposed to you've been here a long time, so therefore you get this amount. But if I hire another person to do the same job, it doesn't seem to make much sense, especially with equal pay and other considerations.
Well, and plus we're subject to pay transparency laws too, so that sort of makes it trickier as well, right? But are there other contracts right now that are in effect that have the longevity stipend built in where we're maybe looking to phase that out?
So yes, so I'm trying to negotiate the contracts similarly across the board. However, every negotiation is a little bit different, and depending on what the give and take is, like for dispatch, we left the longevity in for now. Maybe we look at longevity removal or something to replace it next contract round.
Dispatchers weren't in their salary, it's a stipend. Right. And I know that other contracts have that in here. It's unique to me from what I can see to Fairfield. That is something that we're looking at. And it's something that in our view, it drives up the pension costs, which is kind of like it's not real. It's not based on the job functions.
Well, it becomes exponential.
Yes, yes.
Because the thing is, everything, the calculations are all based on your base pay. And so not only are you receiving the stipend, but you're receiving the benefits from the stipend. So it's like a hockey stick.
Correct.
My only other question, and then I'll leave it to other people, I apologize. On the structure of the 401A plan, how does that compare with other contracts? And like, what's the town contribution on that? Like, is there a town contribution on that?
So the 401A is pretty much the same across the board for the contracts. And it's I believe, a 5% employee contribution with up to 5% max by the town.
And then is the contribution time-based on the town side?
In terms of when
So
the
is it
town
like, yeah,
makes the
vesting?
contribution?
Yeah.
I'm not sure when the contribution is made. Yeah, it's once a year, but I'm not sure when during the year, if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm just wondering if it vests, how it vests. Like, is it?
So it's a waterfall vest after 3 years. So the first year is 33%, second year is 66, and then full vesting at 3 years.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative McCloud.
Hi, Megan McCloud, District 2. Hi, Kathleen. I just have a few questions based on a few things you said, so bear with me. The first, you said you utilized mediation. Was that a choice to retain outside counsel? Did you have to retain an outside mediator? Was there a cost to the town for that?
There was, with us party split the cost, and oh, sorry. Oh, it was actually free mediation with the SBMA. I apologize.
And was
Thinking
that
about my state's day.
That's okay. Was that because you couldn't agree after negotiations in-house? You had to go up to the SBMA because you hadn't come to a resolution?
We actually did come to a resolution, and then we had some issues about whether or not we actually, with some things to tweak out. But it was really helpful.
Okay. In terms of the cost of living adjustment, you said it's 2.75%. Is that standard for some of the other contract negotiations you've been experiencing over the last year and a half?
Not the ones we've come to resolution yet, for the nurses or the ECC, the dispatch contract.
So how will that compare to the others?
Well, there's other things, like Joanne said, it's apples to, you probably know that too with what you do, but it's apples to oranges with some things. With some things we were able to get, with the other contract negotiations, we gave a generous cost of living, rate of pay to go to market. So that was taken into consideration. So it was a different, and also we're looking at thus far, because we only had 2, and tonight you'll hear about the nurses too, but we had hourly employees versus salaried employees. And so it was a little different in terms of negotiation, but the nurses and the dispatchers, we had to get to market rate. So to do that, they took, there's adjustments with the COLAs, plus they also got other things that are not in this contract.
Gotcha. Quickly, I'm sure you normally take like 4 or 5 towns that you compare them to based on size, metro access, things like that. What are the towns that you compare for Fairfield to do your financial impact?
I'm going to leave that to Joanne, who did most of that research.
So as I said, I believe last time when we presented the dispatch, Fairfield is a kind of an anomaly because size-wise, it stands alone. Fiscally, the surrounding towns tend to be a little bit more rich. So it's not really a good apples to apples comparison, but what I typically do is the surrounding towns, because that's where our competition typically falls, especially with dispatch and nurses. And then I look at, just random other towns that might have some similarities, whether it's size, whether it's fiscal. So it's kind of a mishmash of.
Do you remember any acts? So you're saying surrounding Bridgeport, Westport, Easton?
Yeah, well, Norwalk, Easton's a little not fair. Yeah, that's not like, they're not like quite the same. Norwalk, Westport, and also looking at Stanford's a little richer, and they're bigger, they're more. Bridgeport's different because we have 401As. You're in Bridgeport as a labor relations person, so it is a different when you're looking at municipalities and cities like New Haven or Hartford. But I tend to follow more. We look at and we also have 401As, which not all municipalities have. They have still have defined benefit rate, but we also, when you're comparing the salaries, especially with try to figure out what is if there's salaries mixed in with the benefits and what's the sample. The dispatchers, we did look a lot comparatively to try to see what the other dispatchers like in Norwalk and other places are making, but we're regional, which is different because we are covering Westport, Fairfield, New Canaan? No, New Canaan.
New Canaan.
New Canaan, yeah, sorry. Sorry, Liz. So when you're looking at that, it's a little different in terms of comparisons. But yeah, you do the best you can with seeing other trends.
One question about the PCS and the cost share for the 3-tier model. Is that uniform now across all of our collective bargaining agreements based on single, couple, family, or is that a new thing for this year?
Some of the unions already have the 3-tiered. I think it was just the PETA union and Public Works have kind of they take an average and everybody pays the same. So, yeah.
And last, if you could just speak to this longevity comment about retention. The reason I'm curious about it is I am familiar with longevity where it's built into salaries, sometimes as an extra step, right? So step 1 through 4 in your collective bargaining agreements, you might have a step 5 and 6 that's after 5 or 10 years. One way to build it in that way. But in terms of the retention and trying to kind of battle that and wanting to recruit, competent labor, how do we now market that from a human resources perspective? Because we're now removing a benefit that used to be a benefit to municipal employees. How do we justify that as a retention?
I don't find any employee coming to work or asking about longevity. They usually want a good life care or like work balance. They're looking at salary. They're looking at other things. Trying to track people with a pension is, but I'm finding that with our workforce. They want to see other things like, for instance, better healthcare costs, good insurance. What's our hours? We're 35 hours, which is except for some unions and Public Works, but they're looking for that. So I don't know anyone who says, "Gee, I want to make it to 5 years to get my $700 for longevity." I'm not trying to be facetious here, but longevity is usually not a big attraction piece. And also, I think that if we want to look at changes, which we can look down the line, looking at merit, and giving people incentives on merit as opposed to just being here for so many years. And that's the next phase. We're going in chunks. A lot of this language is really archaic. I've been here a little bit over 2 years. We're trying to make changes. You can't do it all like a flip of the switch. We've come a long way. And we'll keep chunking that out. But that's a very good question. So thank you.
One last thing, you said retro was for 2 contracts. So how long have we been out of contract with this? You said retro 23, 24, and 24, 25? So we've been out of contract for 2 contract years?
Almost 2, yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions online? Just asked to be recognized in the chat. Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to the next item in the next contract, which is agenda item 9, the nurse contract, which can be found starting on page 117 of our backup. I just want everyone to know that next week we'll have to make 2 amendments by changing the wording of Unit 34 to Local 5045 and changing July 1st, 2020 to July 1st, 2024. Those were just mistakes in the agenda, so someone will need to amend that next week. Yes, so go ahead, and again, same presenters, thank you.
All right, well, the nurses, I want to start out with saying that our nurses, not that I'm saying, but we have some really amazing nurses that work with us who are specialized with mental health illnesses and are specialized in many other types of things that they face with youth and with students. And they come to us with a lot of certifications and experience and dedication. And we want to make sure, like, there's an area of retention and recruitment with nurses that we realize because of the market value of what we need to pay nurses to be in our schools and do the most important work, to be there for our students. So the the nurses, the union is a 23 full-time public health nurse, 23 public health time nurses. There's 13 part-time nurses and 2 full-time nurse coordinators, which act as more of a scheduler, somewhat of a supervisor. So the total base salary is approximately $2 million in the approved 2024 to 2025 budget. This, we got pretty close to getting before the contract expired. It wasn't so bad. We worked hard to get to that deadline, but we're not so bad with the retro. So going through basically it's a retro payment to July 1st, 2024. So we're not in horrible shape here with this contract in terms of being behind. So the wages and compensation, we negotiated a new hourly schedule. Instead of doing, they would have salary, they'd have a rate when people be prior to that, which would be a rate of where to put someone in when you hire them. And we found that one of the biggest complaints we received during negotiation was like, wait a minute, Joanne's been here for 3 years, and we had to hire Kathleen, brand new, at a similar rate because we couldn't get that person at a lower rate. And then, of course, what does that do to our employees who've been here for 3 years? It's not a great thing to have. So we looked at looking at maybe instead of doing this range of doing an hourly rate that was comparable to the hiring rates we're seeing for getting nurses. So they're 10-month full-time and the part-time health nurses. So we looked at kind of collapsing the longevity piece because that was there too. And we thought, let's collapse that because if you want to make it a wage schedule as you go ahead, as we go on, it makes sense to have service years and an hourly rate. So that's what you see in your backup. And it goes for the nurse coordinators and the public health nurses. And for that, and in exchange, the COLA was, there was a 0%, and then we have a 2.25% and a 2.5%, as you see. So we also allowed to, we had a couple carve-outs to give stipends to those public health nurses who are just on the cusp of getting their longevity. So we put out a little carve-out for those to get a stipend to recognize that. And then in terms of the insurance, we made some language clarification, a lot of language clarification, because I don't know if you read the previous contract, it was very confusing. And it was so confusing that it took a lot, that was most of our bulk of our time to try to clarify to make it so we understood and making sure that we had everyone on the same page. So we also added the high deductible plan, similar to Thea, as an offer. And then the union agreed to the cost shares as follows. PPO, current cost share is 17%, will remain static for the first year of the contract, and the cost will increase to 17.25% in the years 2 and 3. And the final increase will be 17.5% in the last year. The cost share for the high deductible will be 13% as an incentive to get people to move over to migrate. Very similar to what we did with PETA. And I think with the dispatch too. Right? We have that? Yeah, sorry. So there was a lot of confusion over the OPEB and their language. And so the parties agreed to clarify the existing contract language to reflect the current benefits. Joanne, I think there's 10 nurses who still get OPEB, or am I wrong? It's 10, and so we grandfathered those in. And so the medical benefits going forward is not available to any other employee, including new hires, upon retirement. And the duration is from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2028. And they ratified their agreement on November 26th. So happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this contract? Seeing none in the chat, last chance. Representative McHale, or, I'm sorry.
Megan McLeod, District 2. Quick question, just for the quick math, because I don't have the benefit of the previous contract. You converted to an hourly rate from a salary. These were flat salary rate positions before?
They were hourly employees, but they had a range, which I find out with some of these contracts, and it made no sense because of the problems that would happen with disparate pay, if you will. Because we wanted to make sure this is what you get if you start here. We jumped it up to what we saw comparatively. So yes, it went from having the ability for a supervisor or a department head to kind of play around with that number a little bit to making this is what it is. And it's also good to like have for recruitment to say, this is what you're going to get. And if you stay with us, this is how it's going to look through the years.
So I just did some quick math. It looks like with the new table, you have like a brand new nurse with 0 years of service, $43 an hour. That equates to like 83,000 as if it was a salary. Is that about right?
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we used the hourly rate rather than a salary because across the board in the comparables, the hourly rate was was a more comparable number because some nurses are 12-month. And some work 35 hours, some work 37 and a half hours, some work 40 hours. So we kind of whittled it down to an hourly rate because they are hourly employees. And many of our nurses have other outside employment, and the nurse rates are driven by an hourly rate. So we used that for a more comparable.
They also they're under the FLSA, they're not salaried employees, they're hourly. So we wanted to reflect that as well to make sure that it was clear that that's what you're going to get for the hours you work. So because there was a lot of confusion, and again, like I said, that we're having different rates, people's hiring rates all over the place, which made no sense.
So can you speak to this 35-hour versus 37 and a half hour versus full 40-hour administrator? Because I did listen to the Board of Selectmen meeting where there was some confusion in a forensic audit that came up that there was this error, right? That apparently people were being paid for 37 and a half hours, but they really only worked 35 hours. How did that happen, and how do we know that that's going to be fixed with this new model?
Well, how we know it's going to happen is we have a new supervisor who was part of the discovery of that. And in fairness, I think that what happens is, and I don't know, can't speak before this contract, I wasn't here, is 37.5 hours is the agreement. And that's what the bulk of the nurses work, except for the part-time they have. And so the ones that were working, there was a discovery, three things happened. Contract negotiations going to the hourly rate, a new supervisor who's spot on, checking things and making sure that people are working, scheduling when they're supposed to be working, and also Paycom. Because now we're going to have, between the hourly rate, people are going to have to punch in and punch out. We have addressed this as soon as we found out about it, because it's an extra contractual benefit. We enforced the contract. We told the nurses they're going to have to work for what they contractually agreed to. And then the new nurse supervisor who's has now implemented until we get the pay fund, time and attendance completely automated, which we're in phase 2 of that, is doing a sign-in to make sure that everyone is working the hours they're supposed to be working. So I think also too, when you're in schools and there's a schedule, there's not a lot of like direct oversight of that. And I think that if sometimes there's like, oh, that's my schedule and that's what we do. Do I think there's nefarious stuff? I don't think so. I think that no one was really paying attention. So, but it's been addressed and controls, and I think Paycom, one of the positive things with this time and attendance, you're going to see a lot more accountability and making sure people are actually working the hours they're supposed to.
So considering we found that we already were in the middle of negotiations, did we agree that nobody would be grieving any past practice claims about the 35 hours or anything? Did that get waived with an agreement?
No, we didn't have to do an agreement. We enforced a contract. That's how you do it. You give them notice, you say, we found this out, and we're enforcing the contract, so.
And there's no pending grievances about that?
No.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. I appreciate it. we'll let you know if there's any need to return next week, if it's on the consent calendar. It might not be because of the amendments, so.
Well, thank you so much to all the RTM members and the questions and your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to postpone items 10 and 11 till our next meeting due to time, and since those are just RTM member presentations. So we're going to move on to agenda item 12, which is regarding a grant in the amount of $5,000 from the Bunnell Family Fund to the Sustainable Fairfield Task Force. This is found on page 157 of our backup. And Becky Bunnell is here online to give us a little information regarding the grant. Ms. Bunnell, if you hear this, if you could unmute yourself.
I think I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes, so this is actually a donation from a donor-advised fund to the Sustainable Fairfield Task Force to help fund waste and recycling programs. Specifically, most of the bulk of the money is going towards the pumpkin recycling program that the schools do. And this is paying for part of last year and as well as this year's recycling composting program, where we saved, we basically were able to divert about 18 tons of pumpkins last year from the waste stream, which is great. And it's also a really motivating and fun thing for the kids to do. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Are there any members with questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And you're waiting here. They'll let you know if you have to return next week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 13, which is regarding the Click It or Ticket Enforcement Grant. This begins on page 187 of our backup. We have Chief Calmaris here to give us some background on this grant. Thank you, Chief, for waiting so long.
Thank you for having me. So I have 3 grants. Can everyone hear okay? I have 3 grants to present tonight. First one being the Click It or Ticket Grant. This is a Department of Transportation Click It or Ticket Grant effective November 28th, 2024. Goes through June 1st, 2025. And this is for the amount of $9,992.30. For all 3 of these grants, we provide the Department of Transportation with a deployment schedule, and we provide that previous to the grant. We've done this grant for several years in a row, and it is dependent on productivity. And we've been fortunate enough to get the grant for several years.
Thank you. Are there any members with questions specific to the Click It or Ticket Enforcement Grant? Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Estrada, District 1 Chief. Thank you for coming. Forgive me, but what exactly is the Click It or Ticket program? And then what are we supposed to do with the $9,992.30?
I'm sorry, I probably should have explained that. It's an effort to increase awareness and enforcement on seatbelt use in vehicles, both for operators and passengers. So what we do prior to deployment is we provide a pre-deployment statistics for the government, and then we do the deployment for a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and then we provide them with post-deployment statistics, which gives them an idea of the effectiveness of our enforcement activities.
So when you say deployment, you're actually talking about officers out on the street ticketing people who aren't wearing their seatbelts?
Specifically seeking out violations related to seatbelt usage.
So in essence, we're sort of doing the Federal Department of Transportation a favor by doing this, because they're looking for statistical analysis to see, whether people are wearing seatbelts. Is that kind of what this is, or?
I think it's bifurcated, probably. It's an encouragement to fasten your seatbelt, and if there's I guess you could say, the perceived threat of receiving a ticket, then maybe more people would wear their seatbelts in the interest of safety.
Do we do anything to promote it, to let people know that, hey, wear your seatbelt because we're going to be out looking in case you're not?
We do all of the grants that we deploy resources towards. We provide a preliminary press release. We put it out on our social media and all those things to make the community aware, not only that we're doing these deployments, but we're also they're going to see an increase in enforcement efforts on those particular grants.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none and seeing none in the chat, we'll move on to item number 15, which is the item number 14, which is the DUI enforcement grant, which can be found on page 160 of our backup. Just give us a little bit about this one.
Sure. This is kind of obvious. DUI enforcement. We provide a schedule of enforcement deployments. The year when we first apply for the grant, this also augments our staffing during times on where it's harder to schedule officers to work. So, Friday, Saturdays, Sunday evenings, Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings, we're able to get officers to work on overtime specifically to enforce DUI enforcement. This grant is for $49,536,000. It is for the entire year, or almost the entire year, from November 7th to September 6th of 2025. Again, also a grant that is afforded to us every year based on our enforcement activity.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this item? Representative McCabe.
Representative McCabe, District 4. Hi, Chief. Just a quick question, and it's holistic really to all the grants. I think you partially answered it with the overtime question. I'm just curious how the officers' salaries are factored into this, just from a budgetary perspective. It's good to know, especially if the grant money doesn't come through for one reason or another. Obviously, it may have a budgetary impact for you. So I'm just wondering if the allocation of these grants that we saw were for personnel, is it mostly for overtime, or are some of your staff covered percentage-wise with the grants?
So the grant covers the overtime, but if we were not afforded the grant, we would not deploy the officers towards these efforts. Let me explain that a little different. So, say for example, we have 8 officers on the road at any given time. As a result of these grants, maybe on Friday and Saturday nights, we might have 12 officers on the road, specifically 4 of which are doing DUI enforcement. And this grant would pay for their time to be out there.
So it's kind of like a scheduling factoring, not a per staff person salaried factoring, but it's like I'm imagining you can look at your schedule based on these funds and deploy people differently and more of them based on the grant.
That is correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. So I'm looking at the statistics that are on our packet, page 166, where we have the data for 21, 22, and 23. I was wondering if you could give a characterization of 24 year to date, because it looks like arrests went up like 8% from 22 to 23, but crashes went up, like just looking at it, like 30%. So we're not arresting people at the same rate as the increase in crashes in general. And then I was just wondering, like, if we zoom out, like what we think the reasoning is for this increase, and then also what 24 year to date looks like, and then what we think the impact, like I know that I see the target goals on here for 25. I was just wondering if you could just add more color around that.
Sure. I don't have the backups in front of me. So However, I mean, I could probably add some anecdotal information based on.
Representative Pistilli, for those online, is bringing the backup to him. It's on page 166.
No, it's it's fine. I do, but okay. So I'm gonna take a crack at this. Specifically what you're asking is the DUI arrests do not correlate with the crashes.
It looks to, like, looking at this, it looks like there's a ton more crashes than there were an increase.
Representative Pistilli, can you speak into the mic?
So I'm going to be honest, I can't answer as to why. I mean, I think I would have to look at each specific case and determine, you know, I could see in 2021, alcohol crashes were 37, 22, they were 35, 2023, they were 56. So we have an increase in alcoholic crashes in 2023, and then the projected, target goal would be 25 alcohol crashes in 2025. And that's just a number we put in there as a target goal, but I don't think that, I mean, I guess the target goal would really be 0. And we have that written in the next, project period there.
Okay. I think that's good. If you have more questions, you can ask through me. Okay. Any other questions, Representative Pistilli, or can we move on? Okay, Representative McCloat.
Megan McLeod, District 2. Hi, Chief. Quick question. You mentioned that it was mostly overtime that is already factored into the cost of this. Is that all rank patrolled, or are we higher rank also for overtime for this?
So it is normally a deployment of patrols and a supervisor to supervise that group of people or that deployment.
Great. And lastly, just out of curiosity, thinking of the concept of a DUI enforcement, does our caseworker, Jessica, does she have anything to do with any follow-up of like DUI arrests, things like that, when there's substance abuse considerations? Is that part of integration of this grant at all, or is that something you'd even consider?
It is not, and it's not something we've considered, but I will say that anytime that we recognize a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue, it gets referred to her for her assignment.
Excellent. Thank you for all you do, Chief.
Thank you, Representative Zezima. Do you mind? Okay, sorry. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Online, I don't see any. Thank you, Chief. We're going to move on to the next item, which is the agenda item 15, the speed and aggressive driving grant found on page 212 of our backup. Just give us a little background regarding this.
Sure, this is very similar to the other two grants. This goes from July 1st, 2024 to September 5th, 2024. It is $49,962.10. Just like DUI, it is speed and aggressive driving, and what we're looking for in this particular grant is, speeding and aggressive driving. More specifically, is speeding. We do speed enforcement wherever we hit target areas that get a high propensity for crashes and high complaints from our community members.
Thank you. Any questions regarding this grant? Representative Wolk.
Jay Wolk, District 5. Thank you, Madam Moderator. How are you, Chief?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
I have a couple of things about this. Number one, would this grant be helping with with cameras that you're putting up for speeding too?
No, it has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
This deployment of officers on the road actually doing speed enforcement.
Okay, the other thing is, I just make you aware of, you may have heard of this, but the state the state reps right now are discussing raising the fines for speeding, for excess. It depends on, how fast they're going, and then if they're going over 100 miles an hour or more than that, it even goes higher on the fine, and they pull license could be suspended and more points on your license. This is great. I hope it passes, because it's, driving on our highways, driving in here in town, and seeing how fast people are going, I think it needs to be stopped or tried. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this grant? Seeing none, thank you, Chief. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item 16, the Safe Streets for All grant, which can be found starting on page 232 of our backup. Bill Hurley, our engineering manager, is here to update us. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick background. The town of Fairfield applied for and was awarded a federal grant named Safe Streets for All. This non-discretionary grant involved the creation of a safety action plan, which is a prelude to potential demonstration and implementation projects. The Safety Action Plan will identify and pinpoint serious injury and fatality crashes and provide goal-setting, safety analysis, involve public engagement and collaboration. The town was one of a few municipalities to be selected for this grant in the MetroCog region. The design phase can begin once the final agreements are in place. As I mentioned before, the purpose of the project is to reduce the number of potential serious injuries and fatalities along Fairfield roadways. This will also include state highways, with the exception of the limited access highways such as I-95 and the Merritt Parkway. This project will advance and provide information for the town's existing Complete Streets Ordinance, Vision Zero, Safe Systems Approach programs. The project will also encourage walking, biking, public involvement to reduce greenhouse gases and increase public health benefits. Using the Yukon Crash Repository, Fairfield will conduct safety analysis addressing adverse safety impacts, including particularly that affect pedestrians, cyclists, vulnerable users, and underserved communities. The grant award dictated how much Fairfield will receive. The grant will reimburse the town $350,000. There is a town share of $87,500 for additional funding, which we estimated $25,000 would be covered as in-kind services by the town employees and costs. As I mentioned, the town share can include the in-kind services to lower the cash amount. The remainder would come out of the $1 million bond issuance for Complete Streets that was approved last month. I'm here to answer any questions the RTM may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the Safe Streets grant? Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Bill, so do we have specific projects in mind at this point, or we really can't until we have the money, because then we can go out and figure out how we want to spend it?
Yeah, this is basically a planning grant which will analyze all the streets in town. We hope to really pinpoint in one area the areas for crashes and also speeding and volume areas as well. Wherever there are some pedestrian or public complaints areas, and put them all on one map so that we can prioritize. And that's the key. What this grant will do, it was to help the town prioritize which streets we can do improvements on. And then the next step would be to do demonstrations or implementation projects through hopefully grant money, and some of the lower hanging fruit we might be able to do either in-house or through small budgets.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members with questions? Representative McCloud.
Megan McCloud, District 2. Hi, Bill. Quick question. I see that the grant requires a complete streets or safe streets coordinator. Is the salary covered by this grant? And who is in the role for that right now?
No, the salary is not covered by this grant. However, the town, with in-kind services, will record all the hours that we spend on this grant, and then that will help reduce the town share.
So it's not just one person, it's kind of a team effort?
Yeah, I believe it will be.
And going forward, will it also be that way?
Most likely, yes, because usually the conditions, this is a federal grant, the conditions probably won't change as we go to the next steps.
First Selectman Gerber's behind there can just contribute. And Representative McCloud, just so you know, you might want to listen to last month's meeting because we did have a report on the ordinance we passed a year ago. So that will be informative to you. But
Thank you.
Go ahead, First Selectman Gerber.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. One is you're right. We have not appointed the Complete Streets Coordinator officially yet, but we will soon. And part of that is it's a requirement of the ordinance and will be that designation will be required for the other ordinance, the LTA ordinance that we hope will pass next week. The other thing I just want to highlight is that the Safe Streets for All grant will be used. It's a planning grant. Will be going out for an RFP. So most of that will be used for one of the national or international firms that will come in and help us do that that analysis. And our experts in-house will be contributing fair amount of their time to that as well. But the bulk of that won't be for, I think, I'm not sure if this was clear, Mr. Astorita, but the bulk of that grant will be used for the consultants who will help put that together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next agenda item 17, ARPA reallocation. This begins on page 251 of our backup. David Becker, our Chief Operating Officer and Interim Chief Fiscal Officer, is here to update us. Welcome, Mr. Becker.
Good evening. So this is the...
Mr. Becker, you just got to speak really close to that microphone so they
There
can
you
hear
go.
you online.
So this is the final pass for ARPA coming to you in December and not at a special meeting on 12/31 as requested. So you are looking at page 2 on the ARPA schedule to start off, and this would be the highlighted section, and there are 5 lines to pay attention to. So line number 12, which is townwide security upgrades.
This is page 251, if I didn't mention that, sorry.
252, yeah.
Starting on 251.
And so it's page 2 of the ARPA schedule itself, which is page 252 in the backup. Yes, thank you. So line 12, about halfway down, right where it starts, if you've got the color version with the yellow highlighted section. Townwide security upgrades, and line, that's the first portion. Line 13 below that, 2024 Master Flood and Erosion Resiliency Plan. Those two are new projects within, they're not new projects per se, but they're new projects within ARPA. And then line 14 below that, the Police Safe Corridor Program. That's an existing overall ARPA project in general that we were adding funds to. We've added funds there before. This is another bucket to what has been a helpful program for our police department. And line 15, fire vehicle replacement, that was very small, only $296, but that was just the mostly what I call cleanup item. They had it was slightly over, and instead of taking out an existing line, we kept it in the same account, just cleaner accounting. And then actually a reduction is the Jennings Beach concession upgrades, which is below that on line 16. So that project is complete, zeroed out, so these were excess funds. So we threw the excess funds back into the overall amount. We took those 4 lines, and if you were to go to the last page on the ARPA schedule, which is 254 in the backup, or page number 4 on the ARPA schedule, you will see on the very last line, remaining unallocated funds is now at 0. Everything that's out, and thus concludes ARPA. These funds do have 2 years across all of ARPA to be spent. We have to actually go through some procedural things to fully encumber the funds between now and the 31st of December. We're confident with approval of the schedule and no needs to go to any other boards next Monday, that we'll be able to quickly get these funds encumbered, and we're in process on that with all the remaining pieces. We've gone through with every one of the departments that has any project anywhere, and we've verified and, like triple, quadruple verified over and over again that these funds can be, spent, and we feel confident that at this stage that we'll be okay on that front. So I guess I open up to questions on the.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming before us now. Are there any questions? Representative Horton.
Margaret Horton, District 10. First, thank you. This has been a really Herculean task to get every dollar encumbered so that we are not wasting a cent by the end of the year. So I really appreciate all the hard work that you've put into this. I had just one really quick question about the Jennings flood resiliency program. When we approved the renovation, whatever we're calling it, when we approved Penfield, we had allocated part of that for a resiliency study, the coastal resiliency study, and I was curious if this was going to be connected with that at all.
So it is. I believe you're talking about the there's
the
$100,000. Yeah. So there's a flood control study, 100,000, that was approved in March of 21 under capital non-recurring, and there's a resiliency Jennings Beach for 250,000 that was approved in March of 2022. So the next item after ARPA that I'm going to speak to is essentially taking, a preview is it's taking the 250, in theory the 100, and then actually this 50 getting to 400. We've RFP'd a master resiliency, which would a master flood plan across the entire town and all the interconnectedness on that end. Essentially getting to that as part of the end result. The RFP results have come in, and we know that we will need, an additional, it exceeds the 250 and the 100 even if we combine it. So we know that plus some additional modeling, would put us to need 400 total. So, but this is part of that.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representative Ratsky.
Pierre Ratsky, District 10. This isn't one of the 5 that you highlighted, but I just had a question about item number 20, which is on page 253, the Perry's Green bulkhead. Do we have an update on when that's expected to be completed?
Should be soon. I don't have an exact. I can certainly follow up if oh yeah, Bill's and he's still here, so even better.
Mr. Hurley's coming on up to let us know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's like 99% done. There's just a small amount of culvert work and just the finishing touches on the actual bulkhead.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the body? Looking good. We'll move on to item 18, which is the Jennings Beach bonding, which we were kind of getting a preview of. It's on page 264. Just give us a little extra on this.
Yeah, so on this one, so there are, there's the 250,000, and the 100,000, and now potentially if, that goes to 50,000. This is mostly cleaning this up, so we have the right titling in the project at this point. So one of the pieces is flood control study, the other one's resiliency Jennings Beach. There's certainly an argument to be made that we've got the justification for bonding and the descriptions to most likely simply move forward and use 3 different accounts, but it would be cleaner to go with what this is now going to be from a titling standpoint, make sure that that's clear and sort of codify that. So the new title for this will be 2024 Master Flood Prevention, Climate Resilience, and Erosion Control Plan. And the other piece is to try to do these things out of different accounting buckets is, again, not ideal, similar to some things we've done in the past where I would say each trunk where part of it was we collapsed. It wasn't just the amounts, it was actually collapsing it into one centralized project. We're starting to do that with Rooster, where we're saying, got this project, it becomes like a tracking nightmare to some extent. So this moves the $250,000 project into a $350,000 project. We will in the future go back to the Board of Finance and cancel out the 100,000 flood control study amount. We do not intend to spend out of that because we're now increasing this piece. So.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Estrada, District 1. Just a quick question to the last thing you said. Why wouldn't you cancel out the previous 100,000 before you actually authorize this one?
Because we do that, usually what we do is we go back across bond resolutions and like in the non-recurring buckets, and we do deauthorizations. If projects had actually maybe perhaps gone over within those, we do them, we do that as one action for that.
So I'm gonna ask this and don't take this the wrong
Yeah,
way, but
no,
it's gonna sound horrible, but how can I trust that you're gonna do that?
I mean,
see, I just wanna,
Go for it.
I just like you've the body's authorized to spend like $200,000, but you only plan on spending $100,000. I just wanna know.
at this point, we don't have a project for that use. I mean, it's tied to this project now, so
Okay, thank you.
go where you want with it. I don't have a great answer, but I can tell you that we would typically, do the deauthorizations as part of a larger package, so to take a one-off.
When would you expect to do that then?
I don't have a set date. I mean,
So
this non-recurring bucket, it's usually, it's usually a few years from now, actually, because once all of the projects within the non-recurring plan, right? So this particular bond allocation, once all those projects get to their final closeout points.
Right.
That's where you go back and you do it. So it's actually a few years from now, typically.
So that $100,000 could actually be authorized for a few years before you guys actually wipe it off the.
And it sits on the authorized, but, schedule,
Okay.
but doesn't have any action to it.
Okay, thanks. And
know
I
it's
didn't mean
not-
to sound,
I-
and I didn't mean to sound terrible, but I didn't know how else to
Trust
ask.
me, it's not that the thought hasn't crossed my mind as the question popping up or, I can just be as direct about our approach with it and sort of the reasoning why we would typically, do that at the end stage on the resolution. So, and a lot of the projects, if you were to go through it, are still in process, so, that's usually why you do it towards the end.
Thanks.
I think we did it, I was on the Board of Finance 6 years, we did it like maybe once or twice that I was on, so it's not common, but it does eventually get done to clean things up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Becker. We appreciate it. We're gonna move on. Item number 19 is the local traffic authority ordinance on page 269 of our backup. We've already heard presentations on this item, so I'm just gonna ask for questions. We won't have a formal presentation. If there's any questions, we can call up members who are sponsoring it, or the police chief is still here as well, and so is the first selectman. Are there any questions regarding the local traffic authority ordinance? Okay, seeing none, moving on to item 20, which is the senior and disabled tax relief ordinance. Again, we've had presentations on this item, so I'm just going to go with questions. Are there any questions regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 21, which this month we will also vote on this third ordinance, which is amendments to the street and sidewalks ordinance. We've again heard presentations on this. Are there any questions regarding the streets and sidewalks ordinance? Seeing none, we'll move on to item, I'm sorry, Representative Carroll.
Just a quick procedural question. These, we voted on them in November. Do we need to vote on these in committee?
We have not voted on items 19, 20, or 21. They sit on, so you voted on them in LNA, voted on them. So, what month are we in now? We're in December. So in October, they were, went through LNA. They were voted out of LNA in October. According to our rules to regulate, they need to sit on our agenda before we vote for them. So they sat on our agenda for the month of November. And this is the second month that they are on our full body's agenda. And so we can vote on them this month according to our rules to regulate. So we will be voting on all three of these ordinances. That's the local traffic authority ordinance, the senior and disabled tax relief ordinance, and the amendments to the street and sidewalks ordinance. Those three items, number 19, 20, and 21, will be put to a vote on Monday. So yes, vote these, but they cannot be on our consent calendar because ordinances cannot be on our consent calendar per our rules to regulate, because we want, so you don't have to vote on them in committee is the point, I guess. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Yes. And then any other questions regarding items 21? Seeing none, item 22 is on our agenda for the first time to go to LNA. So this you do not consider in committee either. This is only to be considered by our Legislation and Administration Committee today. If they voted out of committee today, then we will be seeing it on our January agenda and voting for it in our February agenda. Seeing nothing else, we're going to break off into our respective committees. For those online, please see the bottom of the warning for numbers to call for your committees. And chairs, please remember to record the meeting. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.